Laurie Bembenek, a name that once echoed through television screens and splashed across newspaper headlines, enthralled a country not only for the crime she was accused of, but for the sensational saga that followed. At the center of a case that blurred the lines between justice and injustice, she stood accused of committing an unthinkable act, the murder of her husband's ex-wife. However, the situation was far more complicated than the frenzy. It was the story of a young, ambitious woman, once a Milwaukee police officer, whose life would spiral into a courtroom drama, public scrutiny, and ultimately a desperate escape from prison that would only deepen the mystery surrounding her. Was Tiaz, Laurie Bembenek, a cold-blooded murderer who carefully concealed her guilt, or was she a victim of institutional failure, an innocent woman trapped in the very system she once used to serve? This is the story of a case that still stirs debate, even decades later, a story of crime, controversy, and an unrelenting pursuit of the truth. Born in 1958, Lawrencia Ann Bembenek, known simply as Laurie, was raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the youngest of 3 daughters in a working-class family. Her early goals would be influenced by her father, a carpenter, who briefly served as a police officer. From an early age, Laurie made an impression, not because of her sharp intellect or unwavering determination, but for a magnetic pressure that was impossible to ignore. She possessed a natural elegance that turned heads wherever she went. She was tall, lean, and effortlessly gorgeous. With platinum blonde hair and a defiant spirit, she often straddled the line between tomboy and head-turner. Laurie carried herself with a kind of quiet confidence that demanded attention without ever asking for it. Laurie joined the Milwaukee Police Academy because she was determined to serve her community the way her father did. But her time on the force was short-lived. In the autumn of 1980, a few weeks into her new position, she was fired without warning. Joanne Shields, a longtime friend, later recalled, "There was something that happened at a concert, an off-duty incident involving marijuana. According to what Laurie told me, she didn't want to cause an issue for any of her friends, so she had to write it up. So she bent the truth, and it ended up costing her everything." Laurie Bembenek attempted to rebuild her life after being let go from the Milwaukee Police Department. Determined not to be defined by the controversy surrounding her dismissal, she sought stability in new roles, first as a security officer at Marquette University, and later channeling her passion for health and wellness into a job as a fitness trainer. But the shadow of her sudden dismissal from the force lingered. She couldn't let it go. Bembenek was adamant about speaking out and considered filing a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. According to a 2011 Milwaukee Magazine article, she claimed that the department was plagued with prejudice, that female and minority officers were punished for minor missteps, while white male officers routinely broke the rules without consequences. Her effort to expose misconduct within the Milwaukee Police Department, Laurie Bembenek took a daring and dangerous step. She sent photographic evidence to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, images that reportedly showed officers partying, naked at an alcohol-fueled gathering. Detective Fred Schultz was one of the people photographed in the scandalous photos. In 1991, the Associated Press reported that Fred had been a detective for 13 years and was well known for both his casework and his nightlife. He liked going out to clubs and loved to dance. At home, however, things weren't so lively. Christine, Fred's wife, had enough of his playing around lifestyle. She had reached her breaking point as a devoted stay-at-home mother to their 2 boys. Their marriage officially came to an end by November 1980. In the months following her dismissal, Bembenek fell into a deep depression. During this difficult period, she started a relationship with Fred, who was around 10 years older than her. Ironically, Fred had appeared in one of the controversial photographs Bembenek had submitted to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Nevertheless, the two quickly became close, and only a month after they started dating, they were married in January 1981. What happened next changed everything. On May 28, 1981, 11-year-old Christine Schultz was awakened by a masked intruder attempting to place a rope around his neck. His screams alerted his younger brother, Shannon, who also woke up. The intruder then entered the bedroom of their mother, Christine Schultz. According to court records, Sean heard a loud bang shortly after. As the suspect fled the scene, Sean went to check on his mother and found her bound, gagged, and unresponsive. It was a moment that would mark the beginning of a tragic and complex investigation. In an interview, a former Milwaukee police detective, Lieutenant Bill Vogel, said she had a bullet hole in her back that was fired so close that she had burns around the wound. One of Christine's wrists had been restrained using a piece of clothesline, and her mouth was covered with a bandana that had been wrapped around her face. Investigators noted the presence of a single strand of red, hair-like fiber on her leg, along with additional hair that were later collected from the gag itself, as outlined in official court records. Meanwhile, downstairs, Christine's son talked with the detectives. He gave a description of the individual he thought was responsible for his mother's death, a man with a sturdy physique, a distinctive red ponytail, a green attire, and black, low-cut shoes similar to those used by police enforcement. Soon after, Fred became the main suspect. During his first interview with police, he provided a false account of his whereabouts on the night Christine was killed. He initially claimed he was out working a case. However, that statement unraveled when authorities discovered he had been at a nearby bar, drinking while on duty. Vogel also told the producers, "When I start doing a background on where he was during the course of the night, it started getting holes in it." At the same time, Bembenek said that she had been asleep at home by herself during the time of the murder. She also mentioned that she had spent some of her evening packing as she and Fred were preparing to move into a new apartment the following month. Then the inquiry took a crucial turn. On June 10, 1981, a former neighbor of Fred and Bembenek from their previous house contacted a plumber due to a clogged pipe. What the plumber discovered would prove crucial: a wig lodged in the drain. The hair fibers from the wig closely matched those found on Christine's leg, drawing a direct connection between the crime and the wig. The following week, Fred voluntarily turned in his off-duty weapon, a .38 caliber pistol, which he kept at home for forensic examination. The only other person with access to the gun, according to Fred, was Laurie Bembenek, his wife. When ballistics experts examined the gun, their preliminary analysis revealed a match between the pistol and the bullet that had taken Christine's life. With this new evidence in hand, investigators began to shift their focus. Although Fred had initially lied to police about his whereabouts on the night of the murder, he eventually provided an alibi that stood up to inspection. That left Bembenek in the spotlight. On June 24, 1981, authorities moved in and took her into custody at her workplace, Marquette University. As the investigation deepened, a critical piece of evidence surfaced. During a search, officers found a hairbrush in her locker. The brush's forensic analysis revealed hairs that were microscopically consistent with those on the bandana that was used to choke the victim, discovered at the crime scene. For detectives and prosecutors, this discovery was an important moment. Combined with other evidence, it painted a picture of growing suspicion and deepened the case against Laurie Bembenek. In March of 1982, Laurie Bembenek was put on trial for the murder of Christine. The prosecution argued that Bembenek had a motive rooted in anger, particularly over the financial strain caused by Fred's ongoing alimony payments to his ex-wife, Christine. Following a well-reported trial, Bembenek was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. Following the conviction, Fred Schultz ended the marriage and relocated to Florida. There, he remarried and launched a carpentry company there. Years later, in a 1990 interview with the Chicago Tribune, Fred remained convinced of Bembenek's guilt, stating, "I think she did it for both of us." Laurie Bembenek never stopped, insisting on her innocence. Throughout her years behind bars, she claimed she had been singled out by the Milwaukee Police Department, alleging retaliation for exposing what she described as systemic discrimination within the force. Investigators were never able to prove a direct connection between her ex-husband and the death of his first wife, despite persistent suspicions about his involvement in the killing. Bembenek took a risky and desperate step after serving 8 years in prison and exhausting every legal option. On the night of July 15, 1990, she broke out of Wisconsin's Taycheedah Correctional Institution. Slipping through a laundry room window, she navigated her way past security, and over a barbed wire fence where a getaway car was waiting just outside the fence line, driven by her fiancé Dominic Guglietti. The nickname Bambi, given by the media during her trial, a nickname she openly hated. However, that exact term became a symbol of popular resistance after her spectacular jail escape. Just 1 week after she fled, hundreds of supporters gathered in Milwaukee Park, rallying in her name. According to reports from the Associated Press, more than 200 people showed up for the event, many of them wearing T-shirts that boldly displayed the words, "Run, Bambi, run." However, Bembenek's time on the run was brief. After spending 3 months in hiding, she and Guglietti were captured in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Their cover was blown when a segment about them aired on the television show America's Most Wanted. The fugitives were apprehended after an American visitor who recognized them from the show and alerted the authorities. Schultz recounted to producers. When they brought her back, she was placed in solitary confinement for a year, but during that time, a team of attorneys dedicated themselves to working on her case. In a pivotal turn of events, Bembenek made the crucial decision to withdraw her appeal, reaching an agreement that would allow her case to be re-examined. The integrity of the case was significantly questioned after her defense team had uncovered a series of troubling irregularities within the original investigation. Among the key issues raised was the dubious handling of the murder weapon, a critical piece of evidence in the prosecution's case. Despite these concerns, a judge ultimately concluded that there was not enough evidence to back up allegations of intentional misconduct. However, the judge did not hold back from admitting that there were significant mistakes in judgment and procedural errors. According to reports from the Associated Press, while the evidence did not point to deliberate malfeasance, the flaws in the investigative process were undeniable, leaving the case with a legacy of inadequate procedures and poor decision-making. In addition to exposing the flaws in the inquiry, this judicial process allowed for a more thorough review of the case as a whole, which had long been a source of controversy. In December of 1992, Laurie Bembenek made the difficult decision to plead no contest to a charge of second-degree murder. She was originally given a life sentence, but the arrangement, reported by the New York Times, resulted in a reduction of years, a far cry from the life sentence she had originally received. Considering the years she had previously spent in prison, Bembenek was given an early release after serving a portion of her sentence. But for Bembenek, this was not the conclusion she had been hoping for. While her legal team worked on her behalf, Bembenek herself did not rest on the small comfort of a reduced sentence. Instead, she focused on a single, relentless goal: to clear her name. Over the next few years, she and her lawyers embarked on an exhaustive campaign to uncover new evidence that could prove her innocence. Their perseverance paid off when key pieces of evidence were re-evaluated. In a breakthrough discovery, forensic experts identified male DNA at the crime scene, a finding that hinted at the possibility of a sexual assault, raising unsettling questions about the true nature of the crime. However, the revelations did not end there. Years after the initial investigation, additional ballistic tests revealed a shocking discrepancy. The gun that Bembenek was accused of using was, in fact, not the weapon that had taken a life that fateful day. According to Milwaukee magazine, this fresh information revealed a case that was far more complex than originally believed, leading many to wonder if Bembenek had been wrongfully convicted. What started as a conviction sentence would slowly develop into a more extensive story of justice, legal battles, and the quest for redemption, one that would see Laurie Bembenek's name forever linked to a fight against the odds. Ultimately, Laurie Bembenek's story would come to a tragic and unresolved end. On November 20th, 2010, at just 52 years old, she passed away due to complications stemming from liver and kidney failure. Even after her passing, there are still unanswered concerns and questions about her guilt and innocence. In the years since, her former attorney, Mary Werhera, has remained persistent in her efforts to clear Bembenek's name. She continues to pursue posthumous pardon, hoping to restore her client's reputation and name and bring some measure of justice to a case that captivated and divided the public for decades. Laurie Bembenek's case remains one of the most controversial and debated in American real crime history. What started out as a shocking murder and a swift conviction soon unraveled into a tangled web of alleged justice, media sensationalism, and unanswered questions. Though she is no longer here to speak for herself, the fight to vindicate her legacy lives on. Whether she was a victim of a flawed system or a guilty party lost in a sea of doubt, one thing remains certain: her story continues to haunt the public conscience, a terrifying reminder of how elusive truth can be, even after the last.